Animation, the final frontier. No. Star Trek is boldly going where the franchise has never... Nope. The next generation of Star Trek shows is... No. Hey, there's a new Star Trek show. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome to my review of Star Trek Lower Decks, the newest Star Trek series in the franchise on CBS All Access. We're getting all kinds of Star Trek stuff now, and the first time that the franchise has gone animated since the original series crew did way back in the 1970s. Full disclosure, I only am able to review the first episode because that's the only one I had access to. I know a lot of other critics and a lot of other reviewers have been able to see multiple episodes of the show. I was only able to stay up and watch what was available, which was the pilot episode called Second Contact. So that's what I'll be reviewing here today. A little bit less of an overview on the series itself and a little bit more of my first impressions of the show based on the pilot episode. And the one thing to keep in mind, especially with comedy shows, and this is also the first Star Trek show to bill itself as an outright comedy, is that the pilot episode a lot of times is one of the weaker episodes of the show because you have so much to do. You have to establish the setting, you have to establish the characters, and even though a lot of this stuff is in a familiar universe, especially for Star Trek fans, there is a lot of world building that you have to do in this episode. So I don't necessarily think that this one episode is going to set the tone for everything that comes after it, nor am I going to judge the series based on this one episode. But I do think that there's some things that show promise, and there are a lot of things that I'm a lot more on the fence about based on episode 1 of Star Trek Lower Decks. Now, if you don't know the premise of Star Trek Lower Decks, it is similar to the premise of a Next Generation episode that was also called Lower Decks. That episode was about a group of lower-ranked officers who worked on the USS Enterprise, NCC 1701D. That was a much more dramatic episode of Star Trek. This has the same similar conceit. We're following a bunch of ensigns and lower-ranked crew. They interact very rarely with the bridge officers, but these adventures are much more comedic in nature. And this goes beyond kind of poking fun at Star Trek to almost being a Star Trek parody. It's very self-aware, it's very meta. There are a lot of references to characters and things that you know from the Star Trek universe, and it's kind of half and half. Half of it is references that are coming from characters that just inhabit this world where these are real things, and you can tell a lot of it is these kind of punch-ups from the writers who are winking and nodding and tipping caps and doing everything else to Star Trek fans, to characters that you know. Some of them land, some of them don't. I really think that the tone of this show is going to be what makes or breaks my enjoyment of it going forward. As I mentioned, it is billed as a comedy. This first episode didn't have me laughing that much. Again, that's not uncommon for particularly a comedy show in its first episode. 30 Rock, for example, had a pilot that I was kind of on, and then as the show went on and built its characters out more and more, I gradually got more on board with the show. So I don't know how much the tone of Star Trek Lower Decks is going to change over time, but I did find it to be, for me, a little frenetic. And I don't mind fast-paced. I don't mind, particularly in animation, I know that you have to do that a lot of the times. But it really didn't quite give itself room to breathe, and it threw so much at you that nothing really landed because it was automatically moving on to the next thing.
Come on, check this out.
Be careful with that!
Pretty sweet, right? Yeah, it's a Klingon bat. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. It doesn't matter. Shut up.
Oh my God, you serve on the Cerritos? Yeah, I serve on the Cerritos. It's the best ship in the fleet. Haven't you heard that? Yeah, I've heard about that. Hey, have you heard about this thing called Starfleet and this other ship called the USS Enterprise? Ooh, hey, Captain Kirk. Ooh, pew pew. Hey guys, what's going on? Are you guys talking about the USS Enterprise? Yeah, of course we're talking about the USS Enterprise, aka the best ship in Starfleet. I don't know. I think it's kind of overrated. Hey, get out of here. What are you talking about? You know, a lot of hype has come in because the creator of the show, Mike McMahon, was also a writer on Rick and Morty. And I love Rick and Morty. I love the tone of that show. I love the pace of that show. I think it fits that show very well. I don't necessarily think that that tone and that pace fits every show very well, and particularly one that's set in the Star Trek universe. This reminds me of a lot of the newer stuff that has come out with Star Trek, where the less connected you are to established Trek canon, the more you may actually enjoy this show. And perhaps this one more than anything, because this does have the feel less of a Star Trek show and more of an animated show that you would see on any other network. I think if you took the name Star Trek off of this and it just became Space Adventure Show, you could do pretty much the same script, maybe pull out these specific Star Trek references, but do pretty much the same script, and it would be pretty much the same exact show. IP is at an all-time high value, so why not take something like Star Trek that has brand recognition, that has a built-in fan base, and meld that with the animated genre? That way you're not necessarily building something from the ground up. You get your foot in the door. I get it. I really do. And I don't want to judge everything by, I'm an old Trek fan, this is my idea of what Trek is, and this is my idea of what Trek isn't. That's gatekeeping. And I'm not going to say that this isn't Star Trek and it's not valid. I think that there is definitely room for an animated Star Trek show. I think there's room for comedy in Star Trek and humor in Star Trek. Star Trek has always had comedy and humor in it. I just think that this, to me, has the feel of a much more generic show. And for my personal tastes, the pace and the tone of it was a little too frenetic. There were more misses than hits for me. And, you know, I'm not breathlessly waiting and anticipating future episodes of this show. I didn't think it was terrible. I didn't think it was particularly exceptional either. It really does, for me, underline even more how these things that perhaps there used to be a little bit of, and it's not just Star Trek, it's Star Wars, it's Marvel and DC films. These things that used to come along every once in a while are now being strip mined, for lack of a better word, and divided up, divvied up into different media and different forms, into television shows and movies and you name it, and sold, because that's the era that we're living in, because we live in an era of more media than ever before. And if you can find that hook, if you can find that franchise, if you can find that name that already means something to people, then you are going to be very valuable to a streaming service or a movie studio or whatever else is out there. Quibi, doesn't matter. If Quibi had the rights to Star Trek, we'd be getting Star Trek 5, the final 5 tier, all 5-minute Star Trek shows done in 5 or whatever. Something with the Vulcan thing would be in there. But CBS All Access happens to own the franchise, and so we're getting Star Trek Lower Decks. This may be some people's entry into the Star Trek universe. And if that's the case, and if it converts them and makes them into Star Trek fans, and they check out the movies or they check out the TV shows or Discovery or Picard or whatever else they want to, then mission accomplished for Paramount and CBS and Viacom, because that's what it's about, is converting new fans. But for this Star Trek fan, it's very much a wait and see thing for me. There wasn't a lot for me to hold on to in this first episode, but I will be checking out future episodes to see if the show continues to develop, if it gets more of a voice of its own, if the tone and the tempo and the pace of it settles down a little bit, just to take a breath, relax, develop, and grow a little bit more instead of jumping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. We'll see. That is to come. And with over 20 episodes ordered, the show has a lot of runway to grow. So we'll see how Star Trek Lower Decks does going ahead into the future. So those are my thoughts on Star Trek Lower Decks. What did you think? Are you a Star Trek aficionado? This is just the latest Star Trek series for you. Or are you a Star Trek newbie and this might be your first experience with Trek? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you do want to take a deeper dive into Star Trek lore, you can check out my video, The Essential Star Trek The Next Generation, where I go over the episodes from that series that I think are essential for newcomers to watch to get an appreciation for what that series is. If you want to see that video, there's a little card up there in the corner. You can click that. Also, if you want to check out even more stuff that I'm doing, you can check me out over on Patreon, patreon.com/Dan Murrell. I have a monthly movie commentary, monthly movie club. I have a show that I do twice a month called Dan Decides. As a matter of fact, one of the first episodes we did last month was ranking the Star Trek films, all the feature films from top to bottom. So you can see all that over on Patreon. I'd love to have you join the film crew over there. Also, don't forget to check me out on Instagram at MurrellDan. I am ramping that up and building an audience there as well. And I'm going to be doing a giveaway pretty soon. So be sure to follow me over there, get all the details on that. And thank you for watching me here on YouTube. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned. Later today, I'm going to be doing a review of the new Seth Rogen film, An American Pickle, that's premiering on HBO Max. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to start pumping out these reviews. I'm making a new month resolution. There's a lot of reviews coming your way. We're going to have a two-shot today and a lot more to come. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.